Welcome to Friday night's video in our Master Series. This is the third video in our recording phase in this Master Series, and tonight we're doing a pre-record checklist and we're getting our session prepared to do the recording process. This may sound obvious, but depending on how big your studio is, how much equipment you have, and how complicated your workflow is, this can be very important to save yourself a lot of time, headaches, frustration, to have a good workflow and a checklist and a process to go through so that you do a good job every time and you don't miss things. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about signal flow, and we're going to talk about templates for your DAW. This can be a huge consideration to make sure that things are set up to save you lots of time and not missing things, so that you don't, you've got your thing pretty much set up from your checklist and from your templates to where you really aren't going to be making mistakes. The process can be hard enough doing a really good job being a producer or being an engineer in any one of the phases without causing yourself problems with frustrations and things like that from not having a good checklist or good templates to work from. So let's start out tonight, and this is probably going to be 2 videos, but the first thing that I want to talk about is templates. Now, this can be a very complicated thing because depending on your DAW, depending on your workflow and what kind of production you're doing, then I'll have separate templates for like a normal song that would be reggae, jazz, blues, rock, whatever. And then I've got separate templates for like movie scores and separate templates for like symphonies. And that just comes with time with you practicing. But when you get a good template set up, that basically as you have the template set up, that what you're going to need in there, I've got a bunch of reference tracks, I've got a reference tone, I've got a click track, I've got a program time for timing the session, I've got song notes track just for making notes about the song folder itself, basic folders, packed folders, and basic preliminary tracks for vocals, guitar, bass, keys, synths, drums, samples, other types of things, frequency fills and noise files for filling out the mix, and for adding noise for when I'm working with noise files. Yeah, I run everything to the leveling bus first because it's an automation process. Once I get done with doing all my work for the most part, I run everything to a leveling bus before it goes into anything else in case I do last minute adjustments like mastering, like the mastering phase on the file, but this is like mastering of the mix, the levels. And then I level the whole mix, with this across there, my leveling bus. All my buses are set up. I've got preliminary buses to start with, or VCAs, folders set up for them so they're ready to go, FX buses, and then main buses out, so that if I have main buses out and then I'm running to my main out, I've got a main bus because I don't normally put anything on my main out because I learned that the lesson the hard way, that I just use that out for analysis. That way if anything comes up that I have to put something on that out, that I've got a main bus that's there before that. And any outs I might have, I'm going to have to go to Soundflower to run it to MATLAB or some other application, to RX6 and things like that. And I know that sounds funny, but the deal is my inputs are all set up with whatever thing I might need, to when I start recording. Most things are all set up, and my buses are all in line to where everything's set up really well to where I've got all my buses I normally need, and I've got most of what I think I probably need as far as plugins off and set up and ready to go, with level meters and VU meters and whatever else I might need on there. That it's basically just set up and good to go. Now this can be a work in progress. A really good mindset to have is, as you start putting one together, the way you like to do things, the type of productions you do, yours may be different than somebody else. And you might do different workflows because of the way you like to do things. But as you work on it and as you start to put those templates together really well, thinking about what am I going to do at the very beginning of the project, what am I going to be doing at the very end of it, and everything in between, that it's going to help you become a better engineer by taking everything into consideration that you might be using in any specific type of production or that might come up that you might have need of. And when you get there and you're in the project, it's already there, so you don't miss some things. You don't have to be fussing with stuff. It makes you sometimes that you don't, you be going along and, oh, I forgot to do that, because you've already got a bus set up for that. You've already got, everything's basically just set up and good to go. And it can really help you refine your abilities as an audio engineer, working through it and creating good templates, really good templates that take everything into consideration. You can always delete stuff out of your template, but having to go back and add stuff to it, it's easier to delete it. I don't need that bus for some reason on this production. I delete it so it's out of the way, so it's not a mess. And mine, to be honest with you, my template, it looks like it's a lot of stuff in it. But I don't really care. To me, it doesn't look like a mess, like there's a bunch of stuff in it. It's stuff that I don't have to think about. I know I start looking around in here, and it's like I'm not missing stuff. Does that make sense? It's all right there, ready to go. It's a huge step, and it can really help you refine your abilities as any aspect in being an engineer in any one of the areas or a producer yourself. So it's something I really recommend you work on. And it can be, it's always a work in progress. Mine changes every now and then. I'll be like, I'm not putting that on there no more. I've found another workflow that works much better for me, and I make a note of it, and then I gray it out, on my notebook, and I change it. And sometimes I change it back. I go, well, that didn't work real well. Let me try this, go back to the way I was doing it. So that's a very simple thing. Next is when you start getting into what are you going to do when you start your session. So the other thing we wanted to talk about really quick before we go on is signal flow. There's some videos on this channel about signal flow, and it can be very important to go through things in order from where things start to where they end up in your DAW and your mixing board, so you don't blow shit up. So you check things along the path to make sure everything's functioning properly, and then once you've got down to where the end result is in the DAW and it's going out the output, out to the monitors, and then you recheck your signal flow path to look for issues. So it's a really good idea to really keep that in mind and understand it can help you going through the signal flow because of it being organized. You turn things on in sequence as you go through things, and why you'd want to turn that on. I turn on my audio interface before I turn that on, so that I don't turn that on, and then my monitors go bam, if I messed up and I didn't check something. And that's another thing. Check shit before you turn it on. Excuse my language. But check things out before you turn them on. That can be part of your signal flow process. So that's a very simple thing. So basically, in your studio, whether you're a home studio person or you're a big studio, your pre-record checklist and getting your session set up can be much different because of the amount of equipment that you have, your workflows, and what type of equipment you may use. My studio looks more like an office because I do almost everything in the box. I don't have anything I don't need. I got a microphone, an interface, and it goes into my box. I mean, because I don't care. I know what I need to do from studying audio engineering, and I don't need all that other stuff. So mine's really super simple. Yours may be more complicated. You might want to go buy some other stuff. But anyway, just a real quick one to go through. Mine's really simple, and the point of going through this is so that you start working on yours. How complicated yours might be, what things you need to check, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But basically when I start my session, I restart my computer. You have no idea how much problem that can save you by little glitches, other stuff running, other programs running, all kinds of other stuff going on. And it just refreshes the entire system so you're ready to go fresh. Does that make sense? So that's a preliminary thing, and it can save you a lot of headache and frustration later from you not just refreshing the system. The next thing is I quit all other processes. I even have an automator in Mac that will actually has a quit all other applications, actual application that does this. And it does a great job. It basically shuts everything down. And then it's good to go. I've checked to see if there's anything else running. And I'll go through. I got an activity monitor that's AT monitor that sets this up on the side that I can keep an eye on things, my CPU temperature, RAM, GPU, things like that, and see what's going on with it. And I'll basically open up my system's activity monitor, and I keep it running in another window so that I can see, is there some other application running that I should be concerned with that's going to be eating CPU, memory, disk space, and things like that may cause a problem if I'm, depending on what I'm doing, at what different phases of the production. And it's a really good idea so you can just kind of keep an eye on things. So I do that. Next, I go through on your computer system, unless it's just completely it's set up just for the studio, that you might have things that might come up that you use with your computer when you're not working just in the studio. It's like, here's an example. I've got this dictation system that kept turning stuff on my DAW and messing with my notebook because it wasn't turned off when I start my session. So I basically have to go turn that off whenever I'm working in the studio because the thing likes to turn things on and off. So I had to disable that. The next thing I'll do is I'll open up my notebooks. Whether you've got something like OneNote here, or you keep it on paper, or I don't know how you do it, or on an iPad or something, that open up your notebook so you got your checklist in front of you, and you go through it one step at a time, no matter what phase you're doing, so that you do a good process and a good workflow, so you don't miss things, you do a good job, and you don't mess up equipment and things like that. And then the big thing here was on follow the signal flow. Turn things on following signal flow that you've created for your system, for your production, your session, your studio. It's a good thing to follow. Because mine's really simple. I turn on, this is mine right here, and if you look at it, it's very simple. It's not that complicated. Mine is, I start turning things on, my computer's turned on, I turn on any hardware I have, my interface, my monitors, anything connected to my monitors. Then I've got an iPad and an iPhone that are dedicated to my studio for monitoring my mixing board and monitoring my audio levels at all phases, and they're dedicated. That one's the little iPhone and one's the iPad that I monitor so I don't have to be switching around in Windows if I just need to check something really quick. Does that make sense? And check anything that's attached to it, whether or not it's needs adjustment. Like my iPad had some thing on it that did the same thing like the keyword did on my Mac. Then I'd disable that when I'm working with it in the studio. Does that make sense? And it's pretty simple that you just kind of go through and work on that, getting that signal flow, things turned on in order, and checking things one at a time. As you turn them on, check them and do a good job of checking them. Check them before you turn them on, and then check them again after you turn them on. And then once you've got your signal flow chain complete, go back and test things. Go back and check and make sure everything in the line from the beginning of the signal flow chain to the end of the signal flow chain is functioning properly in the way it should be. It's a huge thing that can save you all kinds of headaches. So just keep that in mind. So we're basically at a point, we've done that, and then at this point I open up my DAW. I go up in my top window, that's where I normally start working from, and I open up my DAW, and then I just check to make sure that I've got the correct audio device selected. And everything's on, the DAW's open, it's open up to just on. Does that make sense? And I've got the correct audio interface selected. And that's the first phase of it for me. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you take that in consideration. Start working on your own workflow as far as that is concerned. And in the next video, we're going to talk about, once we've got to that point, opening up the new template and checking what we should check to make sure things are set up the way they should so we can jump into the recording process. So peace, self, love. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next video when we set up our session in the DAW.